morning. Welcome to the Express Your Truth poetry series. This is class 3 and today we are going to write a haiku. Haiku poems are Japanese and they've been around since the 17th century, but people didn't start calling them haikus until the 19th century. In the Diamante poems we wrote last time, the word count mattered, so you had to have a certain number of words per line. A haiku doesn't matter how many words you have, it's the syllables. Haikus are 3 lines long. The first line and the last line are 5 syllables, and the middle line is 7 syllables. But what's a syllable? A syllable is a unit of the word, but it's kind of like the stress, like a bump in each word, right? The way that you pronounce it. So banana, banana has 3 syllables, right? Cat has 1, but kitten has 2. See? So it's just the way that you pronounce the word. It's that bump. It's the way the word moves. So let's do it with the sentence. I will count my syllables. I will count my syllables. 7. That would be a good middle sentence for a haiku. It wouldn't be a good middle sentence for a haiku. These are great brain exercises because you have to convey what you want to say within a certain number of syllables. So you have to kind of think about it, right? What words convey the meaning that we want to give, but sound good together. It's the cadence, the way the words sound together is also important. So these are wonderful ways of kind of putting our ideas down and then tweaking the words and making them the right number of syllables with the right sounds. So in order to prepare our minds for this haiku journey we're about to embark in, I think it might be wise for us to read some famous haiku poems that other poets have written. Now you have to remember that these poems were originally written in Japanese, and so the syllables don't translate into 5-7-5 exactly, but it gives you the general idea. And for a more modern take on a haiku, here's a poem by Enrique Argueta, our mentor and friend and poet, to give us some of his fine work.
Believe in the devil, I bet you believe in heaven. Grandiosity, kings and queens, animals and peasants.
So a haiku poem is 3 lines, 5 syllables, 7 syllables, and 5 syllables. So if you have one 7-syllable word, interpenetratingly, unconventionality, establishmentarian, or if you have 7 1-syllable words, the top of the block popped off. It's all good in a haiku poem. So here's a sample haiku that we can write together, right? Shopping. I went to the store. That's 5 syllables. I bought bananas and kale. That's 7 syllables. Then I went home. That's only 4 syllables. So we need to change a word here. So we have went here twice. So let's not use went. And we can say, then I hurried home, right? Hurried has 2 syllables. Then I hurried home. 5 syllables. Ding, ding, ding. This poem is still very mundane, right? It's not very interesting. So if we go through and we circle some of the words that are not very interesting, went could be improved. Store could be improved. Bought could be improved, right? Home. The words in this poem are not very interesting, right? So when I thought about it some more and kept the same idea, I was at the grocery store and I was getting some things. I went through and looked at words. Tarried, that means that I'm hanging around the store and I'm looking at stuff and I'm buying things, right? Tarried is a better word. If you look it up in your thesaurus, right? So the market I thought was a more interesting way of saying the store. I tarried long among the bananas and Fruit Loops and longed for sweetness. See, now this is a better poem, right? Now you can say, but Cassandra, you have long and long, and those are the same word twice. Ah, but that's different meanings. I tarried long among the bananas and Fruit Loops. That means that I was there for a long time. But I longed for sweetness means that I wished for it. I wanted it. I yearned for it, right? And so this is the same word here twice, but it's used in a poetic way because we're using a different meaning. Ah, so that one works. Ding, ding, ding. This is a better poem. Last one of the Express Your Truth Poetry series, we brainstormed ideas and thought of some topics that we could use for our poems. And I would encourage you to go ahead and revisit that list now. If you don't have a list of ideas, you might want to look at class 1 so that you can think of some poetry topics that would be helpful to you as you put your poem together. As I'm consulting my list, 2 things that pop out to me are Lake Tahoe and sidewalk cracks. I think that's what I'm going to write my poem about today. So I've written 2 haikus. These are my rough drafts, and you can see where I've made corrections and edits. I've left the original wording so that I can see that and preserve it in case I want to change it back at a later date. So I've rewritten them so I can read them more clearly and see what I wanted to keep. So the first one is sort of a very traditional format. So the first one is sidewalk crack. It raises up, reaches to grab my unwitting shoe. I trip every time. And then Lake Tahoe. From the dock we caught crayfish. Their greedy claws grasped the bait. We reeled them up. So you can see here, as I made my final edit, there's never a final edit. I found a word that I liked better than pulled. And so I changed the word right there. It's the same number of syllables, and so they both work. Traditionally, once a haiku poem was edited and finalized, the author would write it in calligraphy, which was beautiful script, sometimes with ornate picture ornamentation around it. And you can do that if you'd care to. My penmanship is kind of crappy, so I would probably rather just write it in my best handwriting or with a computer. Once again, I would encourage you to practice writing haikus this week during your 10-minute practice every morning or afternoon or evening or whatever. The literal translation of haiku means starting verse. If after a couple of days of writing haikus during your 10 minutes of practice, you decide you need a little more challenge, you could try a Tonka poem. A Tonka poem is a little more complicated than a haiku. It has 5 syllables, then 7, then 5, then 2 more lines of 7 syllables. So it gives you a little more space to work with if you feel like you're ready to branch out. Again, all of these poems help get our creative brains ready to really be aware of the words that we're using and to be more mindful of the choices that we put together. Here is a personal example of a Tonka poem. Detached retina. Where my eye once was is a sea of distortion. Blasted with lasers, I must rest face down now. Patient, I wait for regrowth. In a thesaurus, every word has a little bit of a difference, and that might help approximate our meaning a little bit more closely. So as we look through the words in the thesaurus, we become more mindful of exactly what it is we want to say. You will become more fluid and proficient with time as you continue to put the words together in an elegant way. Thank you again for participating in class, and I hope that you have a wonderful week as you put some haikus together in your poetry time. Take care, and we'll see you next week for Class 4.